Today we're sewing the Jacinda top by Tiana's Closet, a V-neck knit blouse with double Flutter sleeves. I'm using my regular sewing machine for the majority of this project, using a narrow zigzag stitch of a 0.5 width and 2.5 length. I'm using a jersey material for this project, and for the facing I used a knit interfacing. This way I could maintain as much of the fabric's stretch as possible. I'll link my knit interfacing in the description. Thanks for joining me. Now let's sew a great basic top with fun accent sleeves. Place your front and back bodice pieces right sides together, matching the shoulders and the side seams, and pin in place. Sew both side seams and both shoulder seams with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you like, you can finish your raw edges. I won't be finishing the raw edges for this garment because the material does not fray, but I will be pressing my seams open. To prepare the bottoms of the sleeves to be hemmed at a later step, I'm going to press memory creases into those bottom edges, pressing the raw edges to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch. Do this for all 4 sleeves. If your material frays, you're going to want to finish those raw edges first. So here are both of my layer 2 pieces. These are the smaller of the 2 sets of sleeves. I'm going to edge stitch close to the inner raw edge for both of the sleeve bottoms to finish this hem. Now I'll place my hemmed layer 2 piece on top of my unhemmed layer 1 piece, so the wrong side of layer 2 is on the right side of layer 1. Then I'll fold this unit in half, matching the short edges, and pin in place. And the memory crease along the bottom of layer 1 should be opened out flat. Then we're going to sew the short edges with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and press the seams open. Doing the same for both sets of sleeves. Now layer 1 and layer 2 are connected, and moving forward we're going to treat them as one piece. Now I can hem the bottom of layer 1. We're going to do this in the same way that we hemmed layer 2, making sure that we keep that top layer out of the way as we hem this new layer. Now with the layer 1 and layer 2 pieces still right on top of each other, pin along the top edge from outer notch to outer notch. Then I'm going to baste along the top edge as pinned, using the longest stitch on my machine and leaving tails of threads on both ends so that I have threads to pull for easing. Here is my main bodice turned inside out. I'm going to place the corresponding sleeve inside the garment so that the materials are right sides together, and I'll start pinning at the underarm. Then I'll pin at the notches. From each of the notches to the underarm seam, I'm going to pin those areas in place on both sides of the underarm. Now I can start pulling my basting stitches so that the sleeve fits within the remainder of the armhole. Once it fits and everything is distributed evenly, pin that section in place. And repeat on the other side of the shoulder seam. Sew the sleeve in place with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, finish the raw edges if preferred, and repeat to attach both sleeves. I've gone ahead and applied interfacing to the wrong sides of both of my facing pieces. Now I'm going to place them right sides together and pin the shoulder seams. Sew both seams at 3/8 of an inch and then press the seams open. If you prefer, or if your material frays, go ahead and finish the edges all the way around the outer edge. Place the facing and the neckline right sides together, matching the shoulder seams, the center backs, and the bottom of the V. And pin in place. Then you can continue pinning this area as needed. Now we're going to sew the facing to the neckline with a 3/8 inch seam allowance pivoting at the bottom of the V. I'm going to use my measuring tool and a heat erasable pen to give myself a stitching line around the bottom of the V to make sure that I'm stitching accurately there. At the bottom of the V, I'm going to use sharp scissors to snip to the stitching line but not beyond. And I'm going to trim those seam allowances to about half. Now we can understitch the facing, turning the facing over its seam allowance and sewing the facing to the seam allowance about 1/8 of an inch away from the original seam line. As you're working your way around the bottom of the V, just understitch as best you can, starting and stopping your stitching around the point as necessary. Turn the facing to the inside of the garment along the main seam line and give those neckline edges a good press. At each of the shoulder seams, you can stitch in the ditch through all layers to help keep the facing in place on the inside. Along the bottom of the garment, fold your hem allowance to the wrong side. I'm folding it up here by about 1 inch, and I'll press that in place. Sew your hem in place, edge stitching close to that upper inner edge, just as we did to hem the bottoms of the sleeves. Once again, if your material does fray, you're going to want to finish those raw edges. And you can use your preferred stretch stitch, a cover stitch machine, or a twin needle. And now your top is complete. Thank you for joining me for this sew along. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future sewing tutorials, and I'll see you in the next video.